Hi everybody, good evening. The reason, and of course to everybody, vanakkam to all the world Tamil people. The reason I am recording this educational video is to bring about an enlightenment about a video that I saw that was put up by Mr. Madan Gowri about Alexander the Great. In fact, as I said earlier, the video was completely filled with adulterated information, flawed information, and information that is fit to be taken as a small sitcom. Because most of the content that Mr. Madan Gowri spoke, saying that this is about Alexander the Great, are totally flawed, are totally inaccurate, and as usual, he has this ability of manipulating information and putting in his own insinuated thoughts into the content, making it glamorous, like Yanegal Vandadu, Bhumi Adirndadu, Persian Kingdom, Persian Empire, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Lind, Angavaikum. Honestly speaking, beg your pardon, honestly speaking, if Alexander the Great would have been alive, pardon me, it's so cold out there, so I need to keep myself a bit warm. So coming back to the point, if Alexander the Great would have been alive, he would have literally cried, to hear the so-called facts about him. Okay, without further ado, let me give you these important historical facts. The reason why I'm giving you these historical facts is that a lot of people are watching Mr. Madan Gowri's channel, and they should not be assuming that whatever information that he has shared out is the true fact. I feel that I'm the one who has to do the dirty job of bringing in that air of clarification about the topic. Okay, coming back to the topic, Alexander the Great. Alexander is the most common name. So we are talking about Alexander III of Macedon. Now, his father's name was not Philip. His father's name was Philip II, because there are Philip and Alexander are the most common names used in Macedonia. Now, according to Greece, Macedonia is considered to be a backwater place, and the opinion is that nothing good comes out of Macedonia. That was their opinion, okay? Until Philip II changed everything. Now, you have to understand that Philip was a powerful king. He was strong. He was versatile, and he was known for his virility. So he had seven wives, and Alexander's mother's name was Olympia, and she was the daughter of Neoptolemus. Now, Alexander's mother had a greater influence on his life, and Mr. Mother, contrary to what Mr. Madan Gowri says, that Philip II had a greater influence with regard to teaching him military skills. Nothing of that sort. No. In fact, Alexander had greater issues that his father was not spending quality time with him, and that was the exact situation. In other words, Olympia was greatly the reason that Alexander became the king of Macedonia after Philip II was killed by a Macedonian noble. Of course, we will come back to that story later on. Now, Mr. Madan Gowri mentions that Aristotle educated Alexander the Great. Of course, it's only partly right. Alexander was not only educated by Aristotle, he was he had quality education from Leonidas. Now, Leonidas taught Alexander mathematics and languages. He put discipline first, and Alexander was molded by Leonidas to a greater extent. After Leonidas, Alexander was trained by Lysimachus. Now, like the second teacher, Lysimachus, had a greater influence on Alexander the Great's military career, because Lysimachus taught Alexander the art of warfare, the art of military strategies. That's very important. And then came Aristotle into Alexander's life. In fact, Philip II hired Aristotle deliberately to teach Alexander drama, poetry, literature. So, on account of Aristotle, Alexander was exposed to Homer's Iliad, right? So he started visualizing that he is Achilles, and this visualization can be seen in Alexander's life to a greater extent. Okay, now Mr. Madan Gowri states that Alexander united the Greek states. No, it's not right. Alexander ensured that these Greek city-states became loyal to him after his father Philip II. Actually, it was Philip II who united all of the Greek city-states. Well, the reason because Philip II had a very important weapon that is called the sarissa. Now, I don't know how he had this thought. Philip II invented this sarissa. Now, the sarissa is an 18-foot long pike which had a sharp tip at the very end, and soldiers could easily thrust five attacking army personnel. Like making like a barbecue, like stacking up the meat. So one thrust. Of course, these soldiers who used the weapon sarissa were very powerful. They were trained specially. They trained specially. So Philip used a strategy what is called as phalanx. It's spelled as Phalanx. Now, Philip used this technique, phalanx, in all of his warfares. And that was the reason that Philip was very successful, because he never followed what the enemies followed. So he had this unique strategy to wage a war. Of course, whenever you are far more different from the rest, naturally you have an advantage, right? Okay. Now, Philip's vision. Philip had a great vision. Philip II had a great vision. Now, his vision was to conquer Persia. I'm not sure if you all know that Persian Empire was the most powerful empire in the history of the world. Cyrus the Great was single-handedly responsible in unifying Persia, and then after that, Darius the Great ensured that Persia became a dominant force in the world. Now, it is imperative to state here, Persians were the first empire that started communication routes between Africa, Asia, and Europe. So so this can be understood why they became very powerful. Next thing is that they were the first empire to initiate postal services. So that goes to show their power and their forward thinking. The next thing is that, of course. So coming back to the point, Philip II, he wanted to conquer Persia, because if he conquered Persia, it means he can be addressed as Philip the Great, right? So of course it should be Philip II the Great. And so coming back to the point, he formulated what is called as the Hellenic Empire. The Hellenic Empire. Now, just on the day, on the very day, in fact, it should be the evening of the day, prior to the day that he was about to start his military expedition towards Persia, He was murdered by a Macedonian. This guy's name was Pausanias. This guy's name was Pausanias. So much so Alexander was born sometime in 356 BC to 323 BC. This was the lifetime of Alexander the Great, and between this span, he had great achievements, which we are going to be seeing in a little while. So after the death of Philip II, his daughter wanted to control the whole of Macedonia. So that is where Olympia is coming. Now Olympia, what does she do? She uses her intelligence, her military tactics to assassinate Philip II's daughter, because I told you, Philip was a very powerful man and a very strong man, very rich man, a man of great authority. So and also a virile man. And we all know that women are directly attracted towards abundance, and that's one of the reasons that he had many wives. The things which are documented and the things which are not documented, the stories that were told and stories that were untold. So he had many concubines also. As I told you, women are naturally attracted towards abundance. The best women, the best women. I'm not talking about fours, fives, and sixes, or sevens even. I'm talking about eights, nines, and tens. This is not according to me. This is according to great motivational coaches and mentors. That is their saying. Of course, we can always ascertain to that fact that we can see through our eyes. So that's the way it is, right? Take the case of Drake. Drake attracts the best of the best. Why? Because he's powerful and famous. Okay, so much so about Philip's daughter, and she has to be got rid of from the way of Alexander. Of course, Alexander cannot be seeing all those things because he lacks expertise coming back to these issues. So his mother Olympia was able to spot this adversary, the daughter of Philip II, and she was assassinated. So Alexander becomes the king of Macedonia. Now from here onwards, his main aim is to conquer Persia. Why does he want to conquer Persia? Because his father couldn't do that, and Philip was unsuccessful in that attempt. So he wanted to ensure that Alexander the Great wanted to ensure that the saga of Philip II continues. He wanted his father to be immortalized, and that is one of the reasons that he wanted to conquer Persia. Okay, so with 40,000 troops, Alexander the Great he heads towards Persia, and there is a river separating the armies. The Persian armies against the armies of Alexander. Now there are two important advices that we need to note here. One advice was given to the Persian army by a Greek commander. The commander tells the Persian army, do not engage Alexander's army at all. The reason is that they are versatile, they are strong. Of course, they have a different strategy. Instead, burn your villages, burn your farms, and then retreat to the interior. So what happens? We all know that any army marches on its stomach, right? And when there is no food, you cannot forage. You cannot live off the land. So naturally, the army would go into hunger, and they will perish. So this was a brilliant strategy. The Persians didn't want to let loose their land without a fight. So sometimes it's better to walk away from a fight rather than getting engaged. It's very dangerous. So the cost that they paid was really high. Similarly, another advice was given to Alexander. What was it? It was Alexander was suggested to start the campaign when it dawns. That means not during night, but wait for the dawn, so that the river can subside. It was a shallow river, so that the river can subside a bit. But Alexander did not take that advice. Alexander is a man of great vision. He's a man of great focus. And most of the times, when you do something which is easy, the victory is not assured at all. To achieve victory, you need to do something which is really difficult, very difficult. So that's the way it goes. Just to show, Alexander was not only a great strategist, but he was also a great motivator of his army. And this has been proved time and again, even during the rebellion in the later ages, the later stage. We will come back to that. he was able to speak to the generals. He just said, what, we did so much. He was able to motivate them. So one such illustration I want to share it with you all. So as he was going rounds, before seeing the preparation of the camp, in one particular tent, he heard some cries. So while investigating, he walks into the tent, without any armor. Just he walks into the tent as a normal soldier, and then he finds a young man crying and wailing. He asks the young man, "Hey boy, why are you crying?" He said, "Tomorrow we are going to wage a war against the formidable opponent, the Persians. They're very powerful, they're very strong. I fear I might die, and my mother and my wife, a beautiful wife, would be lonely." Then Alexander the Great asked him, "Boy, what's your name?" He said, "My name is Alexander." You know what Alexander replied? "Either you stop crying or you change your name." Can you imagine such a statement? Either you stop crying or you change your name. Powerful, powerful. So now the battle takes place. Now how does he start? He starts with Lydia, then he goes to Lycia, and then Phrygia, then he reaches Gordium. At Gordium he goes to the temple of Gordium. There is a prophecy. Now there is a Gordium knot. Sometimes you would have seen in ports. The ships have been anchored with Gordium knots. They're huge knots. In the temple there is a Gordium knot, and the prophecy is, whosoever unknots this Gordium knot, he will rule the world. You know what Alexander did? Without any hesitation, he takes his knife and chops it into two. And the prophecy was fulfilled. So after conquering Persia, of course, he wanted to kill Darius. That's a different story. The video will become really, really long if I were to go towards his military expeditions. After he conquered Persia, he heads towards Egypt. And then what happens when he is going towards Egypt is that there is one formidable region before going to Egypt. That's called as Gaza. Now Gaza is monitored, or I should say Gaza is commanded by a formidable military commander called as Battus. Now Battus is a very powerful guy. He wages a severe war against the Macedonian conqueror Alexander the Great. Why? Because Egypt is considered to be the breadbasket of Persia, right? So he wanted to protect the breadbasket. It's a bread and butter for them. Alexander overcomes it. He kills Battus, but how does he kill? He uses the same principle that Achilles used against Hector. He ties a rope around Battus's foot and ties it to the chariot and asks the chariot to be driven. So Battus dies. Not only that, Alexander kills all the male folks. It's a biology. So no men means no children. No children means no opposition to Alexander's interest. So he butchers every man, takes all the women there from Gaza, and gives it to his men to enjoy. So this is historically noted. It's an historical event, and it's recorded by historians. So when he enters Egypt, he gets a freeway. There's no opponent at all for him, no opposition at all. So Egyptians consider him to be the reincarnation of Ra. They fall before him and they make him the pharaoh there. Now Alexander's ambition doesn't rest there. Now what does he do? He wants to conquer India. So he heads off to conquer India. But of course he meets the king at Taxila. He surrenders and joins forces. So he heads off to meet Porus. There's nothing like Alexander is a strong guy. As in contrary to what Mr. Madan says, the elephants came and they got frightened, and nothing like that. I have never read anything like that Alexander was shocked. Maybe he would have taken a little bit by surprise seeing the elephants, but it doesn't mean that he was shocked and appalled or found that, wow, my army is going to be defeated. No, he has courage to the peak. So what happens? Porus is defeated, but Alexander gives his kingdom because he was taken up by Porus's confidence and Porus's bravery. So the kingdom was given back. Now he wants to conquer India. The reason that he wants to conquer India is that he had heard that Indians were the most pleasant people in all of Asia, and that was the description he got about India. That The people there are very pleasant and they're very warmth filled. So he wanted to see the people there, but apparently his army, they didn't want to proceed. 8 years they were away on the expeditions, so they want to return home. So they said no, they're not going to be complying with Alexander's interest. They want to go back. So now they're starting back. Now they're following the Persian Gulf route. Okay. So on the way, what happens? Alexander feels that he has to multiply his soldiers. So what does he do? He encourages his soldiers to go and marry Persian queens. And if you notice, that is one of the reasons some of these countries in Persia, they have got the complexion level of women there is unimaginable. The very sharp features and bright eyes and I can't afford to describe them now, but in short, because I don't want the length of the video to be too much. So in short, they are the features of the Persian women. Some of the so-called present countries in Persian belt, unimaginable. Of course, just to tell you, the Persian reign, the known Persia, starts from European Balkan Peninsula to Indus River Valley in northwest of India and at the south to Egypt. It's not what Mr. Madan Gowri, contrary to what Mr. Madan Gowri said, from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, Pakistan to Angawai. It's not like that. That's the Persian the empire's stretch. So as they were returning, their soldiers, Alexander the Great encouraged his soldiers to marry the Persian queens and take the women from there, and that's why the connectivity, the Greek connectivity is so much felt in the Persian, in the present day Persia also. It can easily be felt even in the food that they eat. Okay, so much so. Now, on the way, what happens? Alexander becomes sick. It's not that he catches malaria or cholera or typhoid, as to what people are saying. It's nothing like that. Why? I tell you one reason. Because Alexander was a warrior. His body is totally strong, and what the conventional people assumption cannot be accepted at all. But what historians think, he was poisoned using the poison called as veratrum album. That's a slow poison. It's a sustained killer. So slowly he lost his ability to control his mind and control his body. Did he die in Greece? No, he never died in Greece. Now, where did he die? He died in Nebuchadnezzar's the second's palace, which is in Babylon. Right? He died there. Now, all the people around him asked him, "Sir, whom shall we bequeath your kingdom?" You know what he said? "Give it to the strongest. Give it to the strongest." One important point I have to tell you. That point is that Mr. Madan was talking about Alexander the Great's horse. Where is Alexander? It's not that Philip constructed a stadium and he wanted to buy a horse. No, it was not like that. Incidentally, he came across this merchant with his horse. The name of the horse was called Bucephalus. It means ox head. And Alexander, lot of stories. I mean, he tells some stories that the horse was frightened of the shadow. Maybe, may not be, but I do not know, because I read the articles, but none of the articles really confirms that. You know, stories they can be story. I don't know if the horse was really frightened, but what I know is Alexander, by nature, he was a man filled with exceptional capacities. You know, every human being have got a special vibration. You know, that vibration is called as charisma. You may be hot, you may be angered, but when you see certain people, you calm yourself down and you become more amicable with the spirit of humanity. Why? Because the vibration of that person calms you down. This is true. Scientifically, it is true. And it's not that I'm saying this. A lot of mentors, a lot of motivational personal gurus, they make this statement. You know, there are some women who are masculine in nature. Masculine in the sense they have the spirit of masculinity. That they bounce at every boy. But the moment they see the right guy, the right man in their life, you know, they melt. You will never know how they melt, but they melt. I've seen such strong character women who really shout at every man. They don't like men who are very strong, or who are in a different league. They will shout at them, they will scream at them. But when the right man comes, they will melt. They will melt. That's why they said marriages are made in heaven. So you need to meet the right man if you're a woman, and if you're a man, you need to meet the right woman. So the fusion, the chemistry clicks, and then you know what I mean. So that is what I wanted to tell you. So finally, Mr. Madan Gowri says that Alexander, we do not know where Alexander was buried, and when he was buried, he had hands being put on the coffin. It's nothing like that. There's no historical facts suggesting that. He was put sarcophagus. The name of the container is called sarcophagus. Of course, there was some gold along that, because since he had some Egyptian influence, that is possible. There's no way of the hand coming out, and he said that he asked people have to see the hand because I'm taking nothing. Well, Alexander knows nobody. There cannot be anybody else more better than Alexander, who knows the truth reality of life. Of course, life is not permanent, but he knows. He has seen the death of his own father. He has seen millions of people dying, being butchered. He knows what is life. So to say that, let the people see my hands, I'm taking anything, that cannot be acceptable at all. Why? Alexander the Great knew life was short, or life is short. But in 10 years, why do we call him as great? The reason we call him as great, he was the only military ruler, military commander who never was defeated. He was never defeated at all. Of course, there were many assassination attempts on Alexander's life. He knew it. He knew life was very short. But the 10-year span, the 10 years that he had with him, he conquered the world. So it doesn't matter where Alexander is buried. That is not our priority. What is our priority? He left a great legacy. Great legacy that cannot be wiped out by time. Forever, he's become immortal. So when we see or when we hear Alexander the Great, we know what it pipes. That is so much so. To conclude, are there any Alexanders the Great among us? Of course, we have many Alexander the Greats living among us, but we need to have an eye to see them. Thank you, everybody.